Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here, and a huge thank you to all the companies that put on this incredible event. I love this turnout. My name is Anela Bakari. I lead our data and analytics partnerships at Google Cloud. I joke that that's my day job, but outside of that job, I'm also the founder of Women in Web3 at Google. It's been my mission to increase more diversity within this ecosystem. So I could not be more thrilled to have an all-female panel today that I will be leading. One overshare, Marissa had approached me about leading this panel, and some of the original ideas were around, let's talk about community building. And it just hit me. No, let's talk about business, because this is why I created this community. It's so we have just as much of a say and a stage to talk about all the incredible things we're all building and working together. And of course, community building is a part of that. But I think we're almost past that phase now. Now we can actually start to elevate and talk about all the great work that's being done. So I'm very excited to welcome my fellow panelists to talk about building in a bear market. Maybe we just start with some quick lightning round of intros, who you are, where you work, what your organization is working on.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Adeline Zhou. I've been in the space for about 5 years. So this is, I guess, my third or fourth ETHDenver. So I've joined the space in the bear market, so I know this topic well. I've been at Chainlink. I was the former chief marketing officer, and now I lead a lot of our ecosystem work, working with startups, with venture, and then also looking at larger strategic opportunities.
I'm Jessica Santiago. I'm the founder and CEO of Art Republic Global. We are a curatorial platform. We specialize in representing contemporary digital artists and immersive public art, specifically for the merging of art, tech, and wellness. And we connect today's most dynamic artists with visionary brands, institutions, and collectors to help them storytell and help them inspire their communities.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sochi Cazador, and I lead ecosystem growth at the Celo Foundation. Celo is a planet-positive EVM blockchain whose mission is to build an open financial system that creates conditions for prosperity for all. We launched on Earth Day 2020. Climate has been very much a focus, and happy to kind of talk about that today, too.
Hey everyone, I'm Joanne. I'm an investor at Samsung Next, and for those who aren't familiar with us, we're the innovation strategy, M&A, and venture fund attached to Samsung Electronics, and we've had a long-standing thesis in Web3 since early as 2017. We invested early in Dapper Labs, Alchemy, Off-Chain Labs, Flowcarbon, just to name a few, and I think we're in a really interesting position where we want to help scale users to 100 billion users, and 1 billion users, and I think we're one of the rare companies that can invest and have a platform to distribute to 1 billion users, across our phones, televisions, and our different consumer products. And so, our only mandate is to invest and back the best founders, and that's what we've been doing.
Thank you all. When people ask me why I love Web3, just look at the backgrounds of who we have on stage right now. You have a curatorial platform, you have an investor, we have data and analytics. So I think this is why this space is so exciting. And maybe to kick off the discussion, a few of you have lived through other bear market cycles. Obviously, we have investors on the stage. I'd be curious how priorities have changed, if at all, in light of the current environment, and how it might feel different, if it does at all, from previous cycles.
I can start. So I think for those in crypto, we're used to a lot of these cyclical changes. And so in terms of investing, when you look around, I think a lot of funds raised a lot actually in the past year. So for us, it's business as usual. We continue to have a long-standing thesis in Web3 crypto, and I think if you look at a lot of the best businesses, Uber, Airbnb, Pinterest, these are companies that raised their seed rounds in 2009, after the crisis, and so I think it's actually a great time to be able to focus on the real builders who are building for long term.
I think from my perspective, I work with a lot of founders who are going through the fundraise process right now. In general, I would say there is still funding for the best projects out there, and those best rounds are still very, very competitive. However, if you're just building another Me Too project, it is definitely not what it was last year. They're not looking for another AMM on, XYZ chain. They're looking for something more fundamentally different. Valuations, I don't know if any of you guys are founders, probably, that I'm seeing 15 million for, seed stage, pre-seed, seed stage kind of funds, and then maybe like 30, 40 for the next round. But the best ones are still very popular, and you might read about them in the news. And then, as Joan was saying, funds really stopped investing at the end of last year after FTX, but they, have a fund life cycle of a couple of years, and so they have to actually deploy. And so you're starting to see funds get more active now and start deploying.
Yeah, and if I were to add one last point, I think if you look at like the developer reports that Electric Capital, Alchemy, that they're releasing, like the developer activity is actually up. And, I think history always repeats. And so when you look at how Web2 developed, you want to follow the devs. And I think like even the energy here, it's a bear market. And I think I saw this billboard when I was driving in, and it said like bear crossed out build market. And I think that's what we're in right now.
Very true. I think there's a lot less hype, and so you can actually do stuff because you're not going from party to party and trying to do all that. You're like, I actually want to build.
That's actually been our scenario for sure. When I started representing digital artists before this was ever had the terms NFT or Web3, that I saw that the contemporary art world was completely ignoring the medium. I mean, it was completely written off. And this is back in 2015. And I knew that this was the most revolutionary medium of art, not only the technology that would bring it to fruition, but that these artists were able to transcend boundaries because they were focused on the actual being of a person. I mean, most of them, before we had blockchain, access to it, they were actually creating visuals for other performers. So they were commanding crowds at concerts, but then on the side, they would say, this is my real art. And I'm looking at it like, these are the next Rothkos, these are the next Pollocks of our day. And so when we started representing those artists in the beginning, nobody even acknowledged even our curatorial platform as having value. And that was a bear market for us, even in a hot art market. And as we started learning blockchain and figuring out this is our path forward, and then that was like 17, 18, by 19, we're really starting to figure it out. We're having access to platforms. And then before we know it, 2021 is blowing up and everyone's in Clubhouse, and I'm getting calls saying, are you seeing what's happening in Clubhouse right now? And then I'm like, what the heck is a Bored Ape? I'm like, we have been here this whole time, and it was nothing but parties and PFPs. And we're looking, and I'm standing there like, man, it feels like this is getting away from me. Like I've been the champion of this medium. And now that all of that has, subsided, everyone's starting to look and say, okay, wait, now I see these artists this is their native medium they've been working in for 10 years. Wait, they're able to take data and actually make visualizations around that. We can actually humanize people's corporate social responsibility initiatives, their ESG data, all of their DEI data. We can actually take a corporate headquarters and make that story incredibly palpable and human. So for us, it feels like it's prime time.
I guess just to add on to that, so Celo has always been focused on real world use cases. I think that hasn't changed with the bear market. What we've been thinking a lot about is how do we support founders in the space and provide programs that support kind of where they are. So that might be giving them access to IDEO in terms of like getting UX design resources, really doing more investor introductions. So I think that, thinking about like where the founders are in their journey and how we can support them has been like very much a focus in this bear market for us.
Thank you. And Jessica, I know you're also trying to fundraise right now. And so I'd be curious what that experience has been like fundraising in this environment. And maybe Joan, you could share more in terms of what that experience is on the investor side for projects that are coming your way.
Yeah, this is our first time. We have, like I said, been in this space for a really long time. And now that we have so much traction and we see such an incredible moment to be seized, especially around the data visualization and being able to help make the connections. So it's been beautiful, a much longer time preparing than I had ever imagined, but I really appreciate it because it's made us dive deep and really take such a calculated approach at where are the real deep needs in the market. So for us, we focus on like bringing people back into the workspace. But how do those workspaces now, they have to be a destination. There's a completely different expectation alongside the fact that the built environment causes about 40% of emissions. So we already have another major issue there that we believe our storytelling and bringing the narrative to could help with. And then also the mental health crisis. And with the way we have built our business model, we're actually able to have these immersive rooms and these digital installations that not only provide beautiful aesthetics and make the space a destination, but also give actual human data back. So all the biometric data, we can actually tell when you enter a space, does it reduce your stress and anxiety? How quickly can we create a state of cohesion? How much can we affect PTSD? I mean, how can we really begin using data to actually create beautiful environments that induce a state of health and well-being? And so for us, that's what we've been seeing investors really respond beautifully to.
I think, similar to what Adeline had mentioned, the best projects still very competitive. That being said, we have seen a little bit more of a slowdown in different projects, but I think it's a good thing because I think in the bull market, there are just so many projects that we didn't really get to spend a lot of time, with the different teams, had to make a faster decision. And so I think it's a great time again for us to reevaluate, like, how are we approaching our thesis, actually spending more time with our portfolio companies. And so helping them grow their businesses through the bear market. And the advice that we give our portcos as they go out and raise in this environment is raising enough, because we don't know how long the bear market will go. And so I think just cutting off the fat, raising enough, choosing your investors wisely, investors that can really help you, whether it's building your business or hiring or different tactics like that.
I love the idea of raising enough. I think sort of the through line that I'm hearing, and I think we all hear, right, during any of these bear market cycles, you're kind of trimming the fat, minimizing the noise, and focusing on the utility, the tangible use cases. So maybe to pull that thread further, how are you and your organization starting to actually measure real world use cases and the utility of some of these initiatives or projects that kind of usher in this new era, right, beyond the hype?
I'm happy to kick this off. So we've been thinking a lot about this, the Celo Foundation. If you think about, the blockchain or crypto industry as a whole, we tend to measure success in terms of metrics like TVL, total value locked, that is geared primarily towards whales, right? In 2019, before we even launched Mainnet, we thought about, what is our theory of change? We're focused on impact and utility. What are different ways that we can measure success? And we kind of honed in a couple of different areas. One was really looking at number of people who have access to technology or tools that haven't had access before, people that are now above the poverty line, looking at like the number of carbon that we're able to offset, so the positive impact that we have on the planet. I think this is the work that we need to do as a whole from an industry perspective. And just to give an example, I think of one tangible way that we're doing that is we partnered with ReFi DAO and Prime DAO to create a ReFi rating index. You see projects that are now beginning to be evaluated based on this impact. And there is some work that we've been doing with the Grameen Foundation in Philippines, with Gainforest, which is really exciting. So it's in a community that doesn't have access to a lot of technology, also is living below the poverty line. We're now teaching them how to measure mangrove reforestation efforts. And they're now able to have income that they didn't have access to before. And those are the stories that I think we need to do a better job of telling in crypto.
Anyone else want to share?
I guess in general, at Chainlink, we're really focused on sustainability. That's one of our themes for this year. And so, we have thousands actually of users. I think we power 75% of all DeFi, a ton of NFTs and gaming and all that. And so we have all these users. And so how do we get them to help make the data feeds that we have provided sustainable? So I think that's one of our major focuses.
For us, we tend to look at utility a little bit differently. One of the benefits to being in this market for us, it was because I had that moment where I felt like it was getting away from me a little bit. It was easy to start looking at, well, we can curate digital fashion, and we can curate for this company, we can curate for that. And we did get caught up in utility that was focused on the obvious, the access and events. And in this market, it really made me focus on going back to our deepest purpose and why are we really here and what do we do that nobody else is doing. And for us, that's the merging of art, tech, and wellness. And so we haven't announced anything publicly yet. This will be the first time. We actually are doing a pilot with the University of Florida, and we're building one of these immersive installation, these wellness rooms, where it will be specifically for their doctors and nurses to help them combat PTSD. So the sound frequencies, the visuals, the entire room will be created. And so far, we've seen that we can induce a state of flow within about 2 minutes. So we'll be able to actually have a closed study that will be able to prove with data that we can engineer a state of enlightenment, a state of cohesion within minutes, which is dramatically able to help reduce the mental health crisis, not only in the workspace, but also to allow other brands and companies to actually contribute to a more cohesive world and a more mentally well place.
I think there are two trends that we've really seen in terms of like user applications. The first one is probably with brands. So a lot of the big companies, they move a lot slower, and so they're now playing catch up almost. And if you've seen the Starbucks partnership, Nike launching another loyalty program, and so a lot of the projects that we have been seeing at our fund have been to do with like Web3 native marketing. And I think the other part of it is probably gaming. I think in Web2, you saw a lot of culture move from west to east. So for example, Google was followed by Baidu, Amazon was copied by Alibaba. And then I think in the last bull market, we saw a lot of the East leading the West influence. And so, for example, gaming projects like YGG and Axie Infinity, I think nobody expected somewhere Southeast Asia to be leading these types of trends. And so I'm really excited because gaming, digital items, metaverse, it's just a very natural fit. And so for us, that's another area that we're continuing to monitor and invest in.
So it seems like a lot of what all of you have shared is sort of the doubling down on the core values, thinking of other ways to measure success. I like your point. It's usually total value locked, but where can we move past that and actually see what are other effects that this technology is bringing? So sort of outside of this doubling down, I am curious if any of your teams are also using this moment to maybe experiment, right? And maybe try new things that you haven't been trying before. So if anyone wants to comment on that piece.
Well, I think that's been generally a lot of what Celo has done. We started very early on with pilots. Basically, one of the things that I love about Web3 is how composable it is. So you can take primitives like UniV3 or Aave and really apply them in different ways. I mentioned the Grameen project that we did. We also kind of worked on a project in Colombia with Venezuelan refugees. We provided under-collateralized loans. These are individuals who didn't have access to banking. And now with a simple $500 loan, we're able to get a motorized bicycle, double their productivity, and now live above the poverty line. And so I think these types of pilots and experiments are not only what we need to see more to kind of show the real potential of this technology, but again, I think we need to, just showcase them more overall. Yeah.
Okay, so I would be remiss if I didn't ask this while we're all up here. We obviously are all focused on our business value propositions, but it is still important to make sure we are building a diverse and equitable industry. So I'd love to hear about some of your organizational initiatives you might be running that are, focusing on this space. And perhaps for those listening, they might be able to take some ideas back to their respective organizations.
Well, for us, the medium of digital art is incredibly male-dominated. And so being able to launch new scholarship programs and really take a very long-term approach at how do we begin to develop the next generation of artists that are able to understand these platforms, these softwares, that have access to the tools, that's something that we're really focused on right now.
Yeah, this is, I personally am very passionate about this. So my family is from a very small town in Mexico that didn't have access to, running water or electricity. And I think too often when we think about founders, we think about like the Silicon Valley bubble, but there are people with beautiful entrepreneurial spirits that exist in emerging markets. And so we've really been focused on like, how do we develop an angel network, effectively scouts that can go to some of these communities. I think also looking at other organizations in the space, that there are several DAO communities that are very geographically focused, also like gender focused. We made sure that when we were talking about our grants program or our founder programs, that we were going to where people were. And that was really important. I'm proud to say that a large percentage of our grant program have gone to women and people of color. And that's, I think, just a result of really intentionally doing that from day one.
I would say for myself, I'm just excited to be on this panel with all these badass people. I would say when I first came into the industry, I think it'd been even harder to have put together this panel. So I'm just very excited and enthused by a lot of my friends in Web 2 who are coming in and trying to be that personal bridge too, to bringing in friends and helping them understand what is Web 3. It's not as crazy. Maybe it is at some points, but it's doable, and trying to personally bring in a lot of the talent into the space.
I agree with all the points these lovely ladies just put up here. And if I were to shill, I guess Samsung Next, we're continuing to deploy. We're always looking to talk to the best and brightest founders. And so if you have a project, either let me know, or I have Sam Campbell, my resident co-lead in crypto, sitting back there. And so we're excited to meet all the great projects.
Joan, meet Jessica. Jessica, meet Joan. I appreciate that. So now we can maybe zoom out a bit. I know we're wrapping up. We're through the bear cycle. Maybe we've gone through another bull. It's 5 years out from now. Where do you want this industry to be, or what do you hope for this industry?
I think, as I mentioned, we want to put crypto, Web3 in the hands of as many users as possible out there. And so hopefully in Web3, I think a lot of the problems in crypto surround trust. And so it's right now we rely on a great community, which we're lucky to have here, to either vet a project or know that it is okay to trust a project. And so hopefully in the next 5 years, the users coming on won't have to worry about that. And so something that's easy to use, you don't have to think that's crypto, and crypto is more like a back-end technology rather like something that you are consciously dealing with. And so, yeah, I think a universal tool that, whether it's on your mobile phone, your desktop, or your TV, or whatever it is, making it accessible, I think that's something that we're working towards.
Yeah, I think just to echo that, when you think back on sort of like the inflection points of technology, we've seen this happen before with just the dawn of the internet, looking at mobile, looking at social. I don't think that we're in a space that's any different. I completely agree. I think we need to abstract a lot of the complexity of crypto away so that it's easier to use and understandable for the everyday user. And that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm seeing like a lot of interest in the underlying technology, how to apply it in different ways. And I think we're going to see like a very different future in 5 years.
Yeah, for us, I think we're all very well aware that dynamic digital experiences are only going to be more and more exponential, especially as we move into more augmented and more VR, and as we have more metaverse experiences. So I'm really hopeful that we can address those experiences from a real place of intentionality, and that the visuals that we're surrounded around, that we're looking at, how do we create mental health with them? How do we create these states of coherence? How are we being very intentional with what we're giving ourselves, surrounding ourselves around, immersing ourselves with? Because we know that the digital disruption, the first phase of that with social media was quite disruptive. And then we started being able to figure out, okay, how do we connect with these? How do we begin to, speak to each other from around the world? I think we have to take that same approach with the digital dynamic experiences that we have around, and that we begin looking at these artists that are really taking that very human-driven approach to it.
I think for me is when I first came into the space 5 years ago, there was no DeFi, there was no NFTs, there was none of this. There was no ReFi, lots of new terms and spaces being invented. And so for me, I think in the next 5 years, I'm just fascinated to see like us doing this for other industries, right? Whether it is insurance or supply chains or healthcare, whatever you name it, AI, it just becomes a part of Web3, or Web3 becomes part of that. That when we have conferences, it doesn't have to be a Web3 conference anymore. It's like Web3 is just embedded and part of it all. And you go to an insurance conference and it's already like half about Web3 because they're all on the blockchain. So that's what I hope.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with the internet analogy, which is the one I like to use. You're not going to have an internet conference after so many X years, right? It just becomes part of the DNA of any ecosystem and of any industry. And I think that's probably where we're all getting at. I think the biggest takeaway for me is like, yes, this title is called Building in a Bear Market, but look how many people are here right now standing in this room, right? This is actually an incredible time where industries are made. And I think to the extent organizations, individuals can really double down on their core values, what's differentiating themselves, think through the ways you measure success in a different way, raise just enough. There's so much great work that can be done right now, even if it happens to be in a bear market. So I'm just fortunate I got to spend time with the amazing panelists. And again, thank you, Flowcarbon, and all the title sponsors for the event for including us. Thank you.